I just keep coming back to, when I think about AI adoption, is one of the biggest barriers of any technology adoption that I've ever noticed in my life is when we talk about it, but we don't use it. So the biggest piece of advice I would have is to actually just start playing with stuff. What are the secrets that drive the businesses you love or nonprofits you admire? Join us as we uncover the surprising ideas at the intersection of causes and brands. I'm Dave Raley.
And I'm Berna. Each episode, learn from leaders of nonprofits and companies that will give you insights that you can put into action. This is the Purpose and Profit Podcast. Season 6 of the Purpose and Profit Podcast is brought to you by Faith Search Partners.
Hey, Carly, I have a joke for you.
Okay.
Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Prompt.
Prompt who?
Prompt me the right way or you'll get nonsense.
That's...
Isn't that like one of the worst jokes you've ever heard?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't really think of you as a dad joke guy, but...
I did ask for a dad joke format and they were even worse. Are you ready for this? I tried to get ChatGPT to write me a joke about prompt engineering, but it kept generating, quote, "I'm sorry, but I can't comply with that request." I don't even know how that's a joke.
Did ChatGPT write the knock knock joke too?
Yes.
Note to self, ChatGPT, not good at jokes.
There is a chance for us humans after all.
Yes, joke
when
writing.
it comes to comedy. No, literally, while I was waiting to start recording this, I did 3 different iterations of jokes. I'm like, none of these are that funny. Yeah. So I'm sure some comedians listening to us right now being like, well, you got to get your prompts right, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, Carly. Well, we have talked about this topic, some aspects of the topic before, but I thought it would be super fun. I recently wrote an article called How to Talk to AI. And you and I have often offline just traded notes on, how we like to use AI or what it seems to be working well for, or where, in the case of dad jokes, it completely fails us. And so I thought, let's do an episode on that today.
Yeah, that sounds great. If you haven't listened to our other AI episode, I don't remember what it was called, Dave, but it was super tactical, kind of like how to specifically, use AI in a whole bunch of different ways. So you can go back and find that one.
Yeah, we'll post that in the show notes.
Yeah, that sounds great. AI is, of course, kind of this buzzword that we've been talking about for a few years now. And in the different organizations I've worked with, I've seen that leaders and staff can feel overwhelmed by AI. They're not really sure where to start, what tools to use. Like there's all sorts of different names of things from ChatGPT to Copilot to whatever. Like what would you say is the best first step for someone who's not sure where to dive into the world of AI?
Well, I think you hit one of the early problems with quote unquote AI, I think here in the first, several years of it being a common part of our, conversation. And that is, it's kind of like, we get the question is kind of like, do you use AI? How do you use AI? What does that mean? And it's like, that's like in today's day and age, asking people if they use the internet. And it's like, yes. So what do you mean? So I always like to go one layer deep and just to say, what are the tools you're using? It makes it much more natural. I spoke at a conference recently about artificial intelligence and how that's transforming fundraising and marketing. And one of the things I asked was, does anybody here use Grammarly? And in today's day and age, that's about half the room is like, oh yeah, I love Grammarly. It's like, well, that's AI. It's like if, Microsoft Clippy from the 90s actually had a little bit of intelligence, right? And it's not just correcting grammar and spelling and punctuation. It's suggesting more clear ways of saying things and that kind of thing. And so the first thing I would say is just, recognize that AI is not some monolithic thing that you use or you don't. It's probably in most of the tools you use. And then I would say the next thing is just simply to experiment with it, because so often it can get caught up in sort of talking about it or how you might use it. But it's until you just open up ChatGPT and type in a question or, ask Siri even a question, then it's just too abstract. And so pull it up and use it. In fact, one of the things we can talk about today, I've got a wave report that I'm writing called My AI Diary. And for the last couple of months, Carly, I've been keeping like just a
AI
log
diary.
of that was super helpful, or that failed. Mostly super helpful, by the way. Thankfully, not as many fails, but some pretty good fails too.
Yeah, that's super interesting. If I think back to my AI log, I don't know if I'd want anyone else to read it, because it's it like spans from like work related things to like random things. Like last week, my sister called me. She's like, I need to get a gift for someone. I'm like, let's ask ChatGPT what to get an 80-year-old, blah, blah, blah. So it would be quite the diverse log.
Oh, it would. I'll give you an example. Actually, so I've got it up in front of me. I've got 28 entries, and I stopped keeping track a couple weeks ago, so I need to add a few. But so pick a number between 1 and 28. 7. I used ChatGPT to draft a quote based on a series of phrases and ideas from an artist. So I was trying to like capture kind of the gist of this particular artist, and I was like, I need something that compresses down into a quote. There's another fun one. My 14-year-old daughter, loves cooking, but the problem, Carly, is that she uses Pinterest, which is basically TikTok these days, to like get recipes. So she said, Dad, I want to make this funfetti popcorn bites. But Carly, she sends me the quote unquote recipe, and it's like a 30-second TikTok of a person being like, and then you throw popcorn in, and then you throw sugar in, and then you cook it, and then you're done. And I'm like, what are the proportions of the ingredients? At what temperature should you, and which order, and all this kind of stuff. So literally I was, experimenting with this, and I pulled up we were in the kitchen. So I pulled up the ChatGPT, the voice prompt, hit the voice button. And I said, my daughter's asked me to make funfetti popcorn bites. Here are the ingredients I know of. Please give me a step-by-step recipe. And it was like, yes, I'd be happy to help. And then it would like gave me proportions, amount of ingredients, temps, and how long to do different steps. And it was actually quite good.
Yeah.
I loved it.
That's a great way to use ChatGPT.
So Carly, when just turning this whole overwhelm question back to you, I mean, have you faced that hesitation in your work? I mean, how do you think about AI adoption?
I would say I felt a lot more hesitation when I was working for a nonprofit. I think mainly because there's just a lot of concern around donor data privacy, hesitation to like water down the brand messaging. Like I would say we were not really using AI in the nonprofit space. We were using Grammarly, so we were using that, but I wasn't like using ChatGPT. I think in the nonprofit space, at least where I worked, I would have had to train like an AI, a ChatGPT or something to write in our voice by like uploading documents and explaining the tone and everything, just because we were such like a unique organization. And I think nonprofits feel that way. They're like, our branding and our messaging is so important. Now you can train something to do that, but you can't just go into ChatGPT and it's just going to know right away, right? Like it's all about the prompt. So, like you said, like I would say experiment, but I know that I would set up some guidelines around what that looks like for the team. Like don't upload donor data, don't upload confidential information, like those types of things. And like maybe these are the areas to start, like you said, brainstorming, or I did use it sometimes for like titling different things, like titling articles or just like small, short little things, but I'd never used it to write anything. I think in the for-profit space, it's more, it's being adopted quicker. But I also feel like when something is written by ChatGPT, I can kind of tell because it's kind of like vague and not as clear. So again, it just goes back to like the whole idea of making sure the prompt is so clear. It'd be like if you told a writer to write something, right? Like they'd want like a whole brief, and then you ask ChatGPT to write something in one sentence and hope that they understand it.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I mean, and when I talked, about how to best sort of prompt, I think, by the way, I think prompt engineering is a problematic term.
Yeah.
Because it makes it sound so like, oh man, I have to have a college degree to, engineer this prompt. Like, I don't know how to engineer, prompts or whatever. And it's like, to your point, if you were talking to a writer and you said, hey, I need you to do a first draft of this email for me, would you just say, write me an email to Carly asking for help?
Yeah.
Well, on what? With what, what dimensions? I actually used one of my AI diaries I had a friend of mine who I've known for years asked me to write him a recommendation letter. It was really during a really busy season. And so what I didn't do, Carly, was say, hey, ChatGPT, write my friend a recommendation letter. I said, I need a recommendation letter for this person to this organization. And here are 4 things I really appreciate about this person. And I just did a quick bulleted list, and then it can fill in the poetic, of details around it and flesh it out into a more coherent letter that then I could just quickly edit. But just like you wouldn't expect a coworker to just sort of make up details on the spot, don't expect your, large language model to do so. You have to give them that context. So the best piece of advice I have is just treat it like another human being. I mean, like, if you asked for that information, what would you include if it was an actual coworker? Yeah,
it's funny. Our friend Eric, he often thanks ChatGPT after it does something for him.
Oh, yeah.
And he's always like, because in case that matters someday, I have to treat it like a human. So that comment made me think of that. But in our last episode that we talked about AI, we talked about how AI can be a good starter or prompt for brainstorming. How have you used AI in that way to generate ideas?
Well, most recently to generate a bunch of joke ideas that completely failed to lead this episode off. Just for example, as many of our listeners will know, I just finished and published a book, put it into the world. It's called The Rise of Sustainable Giving, all about how recurring giving is transforming, or the subscription economy is transforming recurring giving. And so I've never put a book into the world before, Carly. And so one of the things I did, and this was probably 6 months ago, I prompted and I think I used ChatGPT in this case. I just said, hey, help me think of ways to, I'm trying to remember how I did the prompt, but it was essentially help me think of ways to market the book. As you can imagine, it came up with a bunch of different ways. One of the things it suggested was creating some sort of guide or downloadable, white paper. Well, that's not a completely novel marketing idea, but it's certainly not something in the midst of writing this book that I had thought, very much about, if at all. And I thought immediately, there's an exact part of the book that would be awesome as like a compressed blueprint or a guide that I could use to then actually, get people to be interested in the book and download this free guide and all this kind of stuff. So the Sustainable Giving Growth Blueprint was born, which I have listed on our book landing page. And no, by the way, I did not use ChatGPT to write the guide. That would have been a pro move to be like, here's the section of the book, please edit this down. But no, I did the hard work of actually reviewing my manuscript and creating like basically a shorter version of that. And then of course I used Grammarly to edit it and all that kind of stuff. But that was just a brainstorming session saying like, I need creative ways to think about how to put this thing into the world. And that ultimately then led to something that candidly over the last, month, as we record this, since the book's launched, has probably been the number one most downloaded, sort of engaged with tool that has then gotten people, into the fold, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. That's a great example. And I think people can take that even from on a smaller scale. I know like when we were thinking about brainstorming topics for a television show or an appeal or whatever, like just putting some information in there and getting some ideas, even if those ideas aren't the ones, they at least spark some creativity to help you get thinking.
Yeah. And the another one that I will often do is use the voice version of ChatGPT, and I'll say, like, for example, I was trying to think of a word the other day, and I'm usually like driving, by the way, when this is happening. So voice assistant's great. And I'm like, I'm trying to think of a word. It's like this word and this word, but not quite. And just sort of literally verbalizing that out loud, and then having essentially a conversation to say, oh, you might be thinking of, and then list 5 words. Like, no, it's more like that one. Ooh, give me more like that one. And it's fun because there's essentially a conversation happening. It's hands-free in the case of, the place where I was. Often some of my biggest questions, I'm like, I don't know. I can't really look that up right now. I'm on the road or I'm doing something else. So that's just another example of some brainstorming. So, one of the things we've also talked about is analyzing data and uncovering trends. And I don't know about you, I've kind of been surprised at how some of the more straightforward sort of like data analysis type tasks, I don't know. I haven't found any some really strong ways of using that. Struggling to explain, insights clearly, that kind of thing. When you think of AI-powered analytics and balancing that with human judgment, what's your thought on that at this point?
Yeah, have you ever used Cloud? Claude?
Yeah, not much. Are you finding that?
Yeah,
helpful?
I would say that is a great one for analytics. It focuses, like, I have not used ChatGPT for any type of analytics, but I feel like this one is more geared towards that. Now, I think human judgment is still an important part of insights, and back to the whole data privacy thing. Like, you want to make sure that you're not uploading, your whole income statement if that's a private document. But I feel like that one is geared more towards that, and it has a better, just a better explanation. But I would say, again, you're kind of using it as a starter. You're like saying, hey, give me some insights from this data. Tell me what you think. And then you're using that to dive in deeper into information, because, of course, you have greater context. Why was there a spike in our giving in February? Well, I know that we got a massive bequest that month, but the AI agent doesn't know that, things like that.
And that's the piece. I'm kind of surprised that because that does seem like a pretty straightforward thing. Like, why was there a giving spike? Oh, there was one large transaction. Like, that seems mathematically quite simple to identify. I feel the same about even like Google Analytics, where I see a change in traffic or whatever. I just want to type the question, why did traffic spike on, January, whatever.
Yeah.
But so far, not so good. I know Tableau and some of the other sort of analytic tools promise to do more of that, but I just haven't seen the fruit of it yet. So I hope in the next couple of years we see more of that. But another area where humans seem to be safe so far.
Yeah, I have used Tableau, and I have not experienced anything that would be helpful in that way. But I do think check out Cloud and see if that's something that would be helpful. Too many tools, not enough impact? Meet Avid, the fundraising agency in the cloud. Unify data, scale engagement in minutes. Learn more at avidai.com. Virtuous helps nonprofits grow generosity through personal donor engagement and streamlined workflows. With their CRM, fundraising, and marketing tools, they help build trust and impact. Learn more at virtuous.org. Dave, as you think ahead to this next year, what's one AI trend or tool that you think leaders should be paying attention to?
That's a good question. I think one of the most interesting things, I don't know how much it's going to play out in 2025, is the idea of AI agents. The overly clever term I've heard is agentic AI, but I think that's like confusing. But the idea that you can say, for example, I'll give you an example. I just mentioned driving in the car. I would love to dictate, not word for word, but to say, hey, send an email to Carly about our upcoming recording. I have these 3 ideas I want to get out. And I would like to be able to just say those, have them not just transcribed, but sort of simplified, and then send an email to Carly, or look on Carly's calendar and set up a meeting, stuff like that. That's the kind of AI as an assistant I'm really excited about. So I think that's something to look for. But as far as the practical realities of today, I don't think, at least my experience is, the tools aren't there. So I would suggest that really using AI to help you to capture things. And what I mean by that is I regularly will use the voice memos app on my phone. Like after a meeting, let's say you're a nonprofit leader and you just had a donor meeting, or you're a business leader and you just had a prospect meeting, right? You're on the go. You've got to move on to the next thing. Use your voice memos app, record just a quick little, this is what I was thinking, this is my summary of it, and then use that transcript essentially the next time you go and do that meeting. So to me, I think that's just some of those more simple use cases that are really candidly some of the most powerful. How about you? I mean, what are some things that you're thinking folks should pay attention to?
Yeah, I mean, I don't read up on the future of AI a lot, but I did recently read an article. Maybe you read the same one about AI agents and how that's going to be like just a huge influence. And I'll explain agents in my like layman's terms, and you can correct me. But basically right now, AI is like, we ask ChatGPT to do a thing for us. Where an AI agent, you would be able to kind of ask it to do like an ongoing thing, just like you'd ask an assistant, like follow up with these donors, as that like it kind of learns and knows and continues to do it as like another employee. And I feel like that will be so huge, because now we're asking AI to basically do one-off tasks. Now I'm sure you can use Zapier and create all sorts of different things with AI. But the agent piece will just be like a smarter version of AI.
Yeah, I think, and we're both in some sense guessing at it because I haven't actually been able to accomplish what I'd like to in the world. But there's that kind of repeatability. Yes, every Monday morning, please log into my email provider and tell me the open rate for the email last week or whatever. But there's also just the fact that the AI agent can actually use like the internet and log into different tools and actually, people can do that with screen sharing, and it actually is like another computer somewhere that's actually going through and clicking and logging in and doing those things. And so it's the ability to use multiple different like platforms and websites and things like that kind of on your behalf. This was an AI agent, but another fun use case was Carly, I was like really worried the other day that I'd like totally ruined our family spring break. I didn't tell you this, but
No.
like we've been planning on going on a trip, and I thought, I was like, okay, I need to book that. I feel like I need to book that soon. Well, by the time I went on to book the trip, I was too late. Like the hotel we were going to stay at was completely booked out. I was like, I have ruined. And as you might imagine, Carly, it was a Disney related hotel. So I was like, I have ruined this vacation, like it's not going to work. We're not even going to be able to go there. Well, I used AI because there were just so many different hotels, and it was one of those destinations where you're just like, I can't even make heads or tails of this. There's just too much competition. But my kids, my youngest, really wanted, like, her main goal in life was to have a hotel with a really cool pool. Well, that's kind of hard to look. Like if I go to every, Hilton and Marriott and whatever website and like try to look at pictures of pools, like that's a hard thing to do. So I actually asked ChatGPT. I was like, we're looking at vacation. We're looking, in this case, it was in Hawaii. So I was like, okay, help me understand the best hotels with the most interesting, I think, pools, on the island. And out of the 1,200 results, it narrowed it down to like 8. And then I was able to look at those and then ultimately make a decision. So like, again, it's like, hey, AI agent, would you do me a favor and look into hotel reservations, but then also go ahead and find if there's availability for these dates and how much it's going to be and what the taxes are and if what's the cancellation policy. That's something that you would ask an AI agent to help with.
You need to train your own Disney travel AI agent.
Oh gosh, that is, I'm sure somebody's already bookmarked that URL. That'll do quite well for them.
Yeah. I would say for myself, Dave, and this is super applicable to those listening, this is like super tactical. In ChatGPT, you can make like your own GPTs and you can upload documents to it. You can add content to it and then it remembers it and you can go back to that. So if you're trying to write content around something specific, you want it to remember your tone and your branding and all of that. That would be my one piece of advice, is start with that and keep training it and seeing if it's getting better and closer to what you're looking for. Because otherwise you're just asking ChatGPT a whole bunch of questions in a big long stream and it's not going to remember, what it wants you to apply all the time. So that I feel like would be my tactical piece of advice. But if you could give one piece of advice to those listening about AI adoption in general, what would it be?
I just keep coming back to, when I think about AI adoption, is one of the biggest barriers of any technology adoption that I've ever noticed in my life is when we talk about it, but we don't use it. So the biggest piece of advice I would have is to actually just start playing with stuff. One of the things I found when I speak is that people are already using it. They just haven't thought about it that way. I use Siri. I'm gonna whisper so she doesn't wake up. I ask her, there, she did wake up, to remind me when to change the laundry, right? Like simple stuff that we might take for granted, but that's the kind of stuff that's actually super helpful. So I would just say, just start using it and don't overthink it, especially when it comes to quote unquote prompt engineering. Like, just talk to it like you would a coworker. And if you want a good quality output of your coworker, you're going to give them the appropriate context to be successful. Do the same thing, when you're typing in a chat or you're speaking to a voice assistant.
Yeah, I think that's great. And also, I know you wrote a whole article about this. So if anyone listening wants to read that and hear more about just information that Dave has about this, we only kind of scratched the surface in this episode.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. And the AI diary post might be out by that time as well. So stay tuned to the Wave Report. But I hope this has been helpful for you. Carly and I are really enjoying getting to do these just one-on-one episodes, just talking about trends that we might be able to leverage both for the world of charities and causes, but also for businesses. If this has been helpful for you, please leave us a note on our website. Reviews are much appreciated, and I hope you've learned something new today. You've been challenged and you've grown. Until next time. We want to thank all of our sponsors for supporting Season 6 of the Purpose and Profit podcast, including Virtuous, Faith Search Partners, Dickerson Baker, Share, Synergy, Avid, and Imago Consulting. For more episodes of Purpose and Profit, visit www.purposeandprofitpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and we'd love it if you would rate the show and write us a review. Your feedback is valuable to us. Follow the show on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram. You can also sign up for our email newsletter to get the latest updates. Thanks for listening.